Hey everybody, what's up and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crimes Untold, and today we're going to be talking about the Wanda Beach murders. We're going to be talking about the murders of Marianne Schmidt and Christine Sherrick. This happened on the 11th of January of 1965. So during the time period that they were murdered is it's called the surfing era. In the 60s, everybody was free, everybody was having fun, and there was a lot of surfing happening. And this was very prominent in Australia as well, which this is an Australian case. A few of the cases I'm going to be covering from now forward are Australian. I didn't realize that Australia has quite a bit of true crime. There's going to be some other countries mixed in here and there, but there's going to be a lot of serial killers from Australia that I want to talk about. I found their cases and I'm like, why don't I know about these? So yeah, if that piqued your interest, I highly suggest you hit that subscribe button, turn your post notifications on all, that we know whenever I upload. And I'm doing another chatty, relaxing type video for you guys. You guys seem to really enjoy them, so I'm going to keep doing them. Christine and Marianne went to Cronulla Beach, and they ended up going with a few of Marianne's siblings. So there's 4 of her younger siblings. Now, mind you, they went there in hopes of swimming for the day. This is somewhere where the Schmidt family would tend to go, and this is so they could have some family bonding time. So her dad had passed away prior, so it was just her mom, and her mom was really sick. So this was a way for Marianne and Christine to get the kids out of the house, and Christine was a neighboring child, and she became very good friends with her. So they ended up going to Cronulla Beach on the 11th of January of 1965, but when they got there, the winds were too rapid and sand was blowing around, so they decided not to go in the water, mainly due to the fact that it was closed. So instead of throwing away the day, they decided that they were just going to continue down the beach and stay near the rocks or the jetty area. It was windy, and they figured that, hey, we're near the rocks, we'll be close to the water, this should be fine, the kids can just explore the rocks. But one of the siblings, Wolfgang, he's 8 years old, he wanted to swim, so Marianne ended up going in a shallow point of the water with him. So it's following this of them swimming, they end up returning back to the group so they could have their picnic, because they brought some food, they wanted to eat their food or whatever. Sometime during this, Christine gets up and she ventures off by herself, which this kind of comes back to the autopsy, because she has different food in her system rather than everybody else with what they ate for the picnic. But she would return a little while later. She just kind of went off by herself and would come back. So the entire group then decided to go for a stroll. This was around 1 p.m. But at some point during this stroll, the winds were so bad, because they were walking through the dune area. The winds were so bad they had to stop, because sand is flowing around. It's just not feasible to keep walking. So Christine and Marianne then would continue on the stroll, but without the kids. They told the younger ones that they would come back to the jetty and they would all go home together, but they didn't return. At around 5 p.m., the younger kids had waited for them for a while, but then they figured, you know what, we're going to pack up everything and we're going to go home. So they ended up getting home around 8 p.m., and they then figured they would go and inform Christine's grandmother that they don't know where she is. The teens then would be reported missing at 8:30 p.m. by Christine's grandmother. So January 12th rolls around. This is when a discovery would be made. Peter Smith was walking with his nephews through the Wanda Beach Hills, and this is when he would see something out of the ordinary, or out of the normal. At first he saw what he thought was a mannequin that was face down, but after brushing away some sand, it dawned on him that, hey, this isn't a mannequin, this is the corpse of somebody, and he called the police. So Marianne was laying on her right side, and Christine was found face down at the scene. Christine had a blood alcohol content of 0.015, which this is kind of weird because there's no mentions of any alcohol during the picnic, but maybe she had some alcohol after. It was just her and Marianne. I don't know. Christine was also stabbed a total of 14 times. Her skull was fractured, also due to a blow to the back of the head. Now, Marianne was stabbed 6 times. This ended up being concluded to be actually 25 to 30 times. And her throat was slashed. Now, her throat was slashed so deeply that she was nearly decapitated because of how vicious the cut was. Both of the girls were found with semen on them, but they were not completely sexually assaulted. I have a theory about this, but you gotta give me a second. So both of the girls' hymens were intact, and even with the hymens being intact, there were still some signs of molestation. So maybe our killer experienced premature ejaculation. It's entirely plausible that this is what happened, but we don't know. Their underwear as well had been cut, which showed intent to rape them, but they weren't raped. There was male DNA that was found on jeans worn by one of the girls. This was in 2012 when this discovery was made. Also in 2014, police then were unable to find the semen sample that was found on Marianne's body, so that they've never been able to find it, so it's lost at this point. During the initial investigation, it was determined that Christine was trying to flee the scene and was dragged back to where she would end up being killed. And they think this is probably when Marianne was dying. So they think this because there's drag marks that led back to the scene, which was 37 yards long. So they think that he, or whomever did this, attacked Marianne, and then Christine freaked out and fled, and then the killer, dragged her back and then killed her. Police did do a search of the area for potential weapons, but they only found a knife blade with blood stains on it, but they were unable to connect it to this murder. Wolfgang, the younger brother, or one of the younger siblings, would pay attention to some key details, or try and remember key details from when Christine was walking by herself. This is when he saw a teenage male looking for crabs. But this wouldn't be the only time he would see this young teenage male. He saw him 2 more times. One of the times was with Christine and Marianne. This boy is believed to have been carrying a fishing knife or a spear gun, a homemade spear gun of some sort. But when the police went to inquire about this boy, they were unable to figure out who he was. This case is still unsolved to this day. So I believe that this case potentially could be solved using DNA or DNA testing or any type of genotyping, but I don't actually believe that our killer is one of the 3 suspects that I'm going to talk about. I believe that this killer is younger, around similar age to the girls, which the girls were 15 at the time. And I believe this because of how frenzied it is. Typically, a first-time killer is all over the place. This person definitely reoffends at some point. But they wouldn't reoffend until a few years later, or a few years following this. So due to this thought, I would look into the murders in Australia, or different murders in Australia pre and post to this case, because it's entirely plausible that this killer had taken a life either prior to or was a virgin killer at this point. But I couldn't find any other crime that was even remotely similar to this case, other than the 3 possible ones that are connected to this case. So we have the Beaumont children. That happened just prior to the murders of Christine and Marianne. Then we have the murder of Anna Toskoya Dowlinkoa. Hopefully I said that right. That happened on the 16th of February of 1966. And then we have the murder of Wilhelmina Kruger, which happened on the 29th of January of 1966. So those are the only ones that, they're publicly out there that they are connected to this case, but we don't know if it's the same person that committed these that are responsible for the murders of Christine and Marianne. So we do have 3 different suspects that they have. They're well-known suspects, but again, I don't know if they're responsible for them. The first one is we can still keep him on the true suspect list, but I don't know. So first one is Christopher Wilder, who is the beauty queen killer, who I have on my list for a future video. He is a serial killer that was active between 1969 to his death on April 13th of 1984. We know his specific date of death because he was killed during a standoff with police here in New Hampshire. So number 2 is Derek Percy. Derek Percy was linked to the murder due to a crime he committed against a child in Victoria that also happened on a beach. Unfortunately, he would never relay any confessions to any other murders because he died from cancer in 2013. The third one is Alan Bassett, which this one is kind of very strange. So he's a painter and he killed Carolyn Orphan. And he's also suspected in this murder case due to him gifting a painting to a former detective in 1975. So in this painting, the detective thinks it gives an eerie portrayal of the murder scene at Wanda Beach. Now, the paintings in general are interpretational, so it's whatever the viewer is seeing. And apparently this detective thinks he sees a knife blade, blood trails, and a corpse in this painting. So after he receives this and he thinks he sees this, this is when this detective believes the man that gave it to him, Alan Bassett, is the one that killed these girls. It's also thought that the scene gives clues to the unsolved murders of Kruger in Dalincoa or of the Beaumont children disappearance. As I mentioned those previously, they are connected to these cases, but we don't know. Also, we would not find out whether or not Alan Bassett is connected to these because he was killed in an accident. This case is very strange because there's a lot of unknowns. What the girls were wearing is up in the air because some reports say it's jeans, some say it's bathing suits, some say they're wearing underwear, some are saying they're wearing bathing suits. Like, a lot of the key details of this case are very strange because a lot of things are not confirmed. A lot of things are all over the place. This is a highly publicized case in Australia, but we don't know. It's like the case of Tom and Shud, which that case was finally, we figured out who he was. But there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know what happened. We don't know how he died. Like, we know how he died, but we don't know why. Like, it's the same thing with these girls. We know how they died, where they died, when they died. We don't know who. We don't know why. It's just two 15-year-old girls that were at the beach on this day with one of the girls' siblings to just spend some time at the beach. Why were they targeted? Sometimes MOs of killers, we don't know. Things like these, where I've been very candid talking about certain things of why I think certain serial killers do what they do, is because of their MO. Did this guy have a thing with younger girls? More than likely. Why was it the beach? Was he following these girls? Did he know that they were going to be there? Obviously, if this is a familiar place for the Schmidt family to go to, this guy's been watching them for a while. Maybe he got super excited knowing that, or seeing that there's two 15-year-old girls there. Perfect timing for him to get two for the price of one, basically. Was this a virgin killer? Was this an experienced killer? We don't know. I have thoughts of this being a virgin killer and this being an experienced killer because there are certain things about this where it screams frenzied attack, which is more commonly known for a virgin killer. The way they both were killed is they vary. One was stabbed 14 times. The other one was stabbed upwards of 30 times, which is more of a frenzied thing. One didn't run, but the other one did. So it's like, why would you kill one so severely when the other one is not as bad? You know what I mean? Marianne was literally nearly decapitated. And then the other one was only stabbed 14 times. Granted, she was hit in the back of the head, and Marianne wasn't. So maybe, here's my thought, that Christine probably, I mean, she could have been going to the bathroom or like veered off from Marianne. The guy attacks Marianne and attacks her in a way that he probably was going to attack Christine. And then here comes Christine out of nowhere, and then she flees. This dude is fight or flight, like, fuck, now I have to take care of her. Maybe that's why he hit her on the back of the head. So when he finally caught up to her, he hit her on the back of the head to subdue her, and then dragged her back to close to where Marianne was. And this is when he decided to, because obviously now she's unconscious from the blow to the head, here, I'm going to stab her, but I can't. Something is stopping him from mutilating Christine's body to the point that Marianne's were. That, and maybe he hit that point of his sexual desire or sexual need behind killing them, and that's when he had, ejaculated on them. I don't know. Is that part of his MO? Did he premature ejaculate before he wanted to rape them due to their clothing being cut? I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns with this case. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that is kept in the case file that we have no idea about. What are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments down below. I would love to know. And that, my friends, is the murder of Christine and Marianne, the Wanda Beach murders. And I'll see you guys in my next one.